You're very welcome to the Woman to Woman Show's panel discussion here on Confident Women Ireland's YouTube channel with me, Roisin de Klerk. On our guest panel, we will be from all over Ireland who are passionate about talking about the topics and issues relating to women here in Ireland and abroad. I'm delighted to introduce the panel for tonight's show, starting with Rosemary, who is a mum with grown-up kids who spent her 20s living in California, with the majority in San Francisco, and very enmeshed with the gay community, arts and music, which all went together at the time and place. Rosemary's back living in Dublin and just showing us all her glamour and her vitality here back home. Sorcha is a sportswoman for the Countess. Sorcha is a camogie fan, long-time breastfeeding supporter, former midwife, married to 3 daughters, a dub living in Galway. Sabrina Devine was on the board of directors for Dublin Pride. Sabrina was in charge of putting on the events around Dublin Pride Festival back in 2013. She was also a volunteer for Dublin Pride for many years previous and helping with events, stewarding with the Pride Parade. Claire is a women's rights activist, particularly within large organisations. Annaïg is also a women's rights activist, especially within the with lesbian women here in Ireland and across the pond in the UK. Tonight on this show, we are touching on various issues lesbian women here in Ireland have to deal with. We're discussing the challenges within women's rights within lesbians here in Ireland, especially within the safe places and spaces with lesbian bars, which is a huge part of the issue for women who don't even want men for romantic sexual reasons, and dealing with the gender issues and lesbian women have to deal with. We'll be touching on the general misogyny of it all, as that's a huge part of the issues we have here with women who don't want men for romantic reasons. Annaïg will also want to hear from the panel what it's like pre-1993 here in Ireland with homophobia, attitudes towards lesbians, particularly from various viewpoints. You're very welcome, ladies, to our second panel women's discussion. And I have a little pretty cat here who's waiting to jump on top of me any moment. And this is Percy. So if he jumps in, excuse him. They don't want you to, they're like children. They don't want you to, you're on the phone or on Zoom, just like our kids. He's away now. So, as I mentioned in our intro, Annaïg Birdy is going to be talking about the issues that lesbian women here in Ireland, and I'm imagining across the UK as well, are experiencing. And I didn't realise that that I just thought the issues that lesbian women were having in bars and everything was since the gender issues that is happening over the last couple of years. But off air, you were telling us that this has actually been happening since 2015, since the referendum. So maybe start off there and tell us how did that happen since 2015?
Yeah, so in 2015, I was only 17, so I wasn't able to vote, but obviously I had just realized I was a gay woman and I was very invested in the referendum, obviously, because I was like, oh my God, this is going to affect me now. But so since then, I've spoken to older lesbians who were out before that and were involved in campaigning for a yes vote. And we won by a landslide, and that's incredible. But the self ID was brought in on the same referendum, kind of, it wasn't discussed at the time. It was like there was no public consultation, or there was a very tiny window. You know, we've seen it recently with other public consultations with the hate crime legislation and things like that, that they are doing like 24-hour windows for a public consultation and not announcing it publicly. So it was a similar situation. And they brought self ID in, and speaking to the lesbians that were, you know, out and proud and like campaigning for it, and older lesbians in Ireland, they said, oh my God, it was such a momentous occasion. They talk about how they celebrated like they'd never celebrated before when they got the yes vote, and it was they said that Dublin city centre was like the most insane party that they'd ever seen ever. It was like this amazing thing. And obviously I was only 17, so I wasn't able to be part of that. So jealous, because it sounds like the most unreal night out ever. But they said then they realized very, very quickly after that that self-ID had been brought in under the guise of a gay rights issue. And because it was tagged on at the end of marriage equality, and everyone thought that the referendum was solely about gay rights. And everyone was like, absolutely, gay rights, yes. Have your marriage equality, yes, that's great. And it was kind of hidden under our tailcoats as gay people. And then self ID came in, and then very, very quickly afterwards, it was biological males were identifying as women, and they could go, and it's only a tenner in a solicitor's office to just get a piece of paper signed. This is how you get your self ID. There's no requirements for doctors, no psychologists, no anything. Like literally, I could go into a solicitor's office tomorrow and declare myself a man, and they can't question it. I pay a tenner, and then I get a gender recognition cert, and that's what started happening really quickly. And it was men identifying as lesbians, um, which is one of the main issues that we're facing now as lesbians. There's various issues that we're facing, but that's kind of the main one, and I think the most obvious one. Um, in there's a Dublin gay bar. There's three kind of main gay bars in Dublin. One is owned by Panty Bliss, and that's kind of male dominant, drag queen centric, like that whole scene. Then the George is very male dominant as well, and then there's another bar, and it's owned by lesbians. Was intended to be more like the lesbian friendly bar, and there is several people that I know have been barred from that bar for saying that they don't think men should be in their bathroom, even if the males identify as women, that they're not comfortable, that males can't identify as lesbians. Um, and it's just crazy that in 2024 we have to state the fact that lesbian is a female homosexual, that a biological male can't identify into our sex class, firstly, um, and into our sexuality, because like the amount of years that we've had to fight to say like no, it is female homosexuals are female homosexuals. There is no men, and now there's this new thing, and we're considered hateful or whatever for being exclusionary of biological men who identify as women. And that started in 2015 because of self ID. Like now we have no real legal standing for it. But obviously, but like there was issues before that, but that's the new issue since 2015.
Did anyone else know, Sorka, did you know that this issue was started since 2015? And Sabina, because I didn't, I only found that out tonight.
Well, I knew that self ID had been sort of snuck in the back door by the government at the time, and the approach that they took, where they tie it. So the approach that they took was outlined in what's called the Denton's playbook. So it was detailed that this was the best way to get self ID enacted in any jurisdiction was to tie it to popular reform, which marriage equality was. So even though that wasn't included in the referendum, and it wasn't required to be included in the referendum, it rode on that kind of wave of positive support for gay rights. And then the parties, I think what happened, like the parties in the Dáil and the political parties didn't want to be seen as regressive, so they didn't challenge anything they were told by the trans organisations, and that did open the door. But what I find what Annaïg is saying is actually A man doesn't need a piece of paper to pretend he's a woman in a bar, because you're not allowed to ask them to provide the piece of paper anyway. So it's actually irrelevant whether or not he has gone and paid the tenner. Like we have no way of saying, you know, we think you're a man, give us a piece of paper to prove you're not. Like that's against the law. It's against an invasion of his rights to privacy.
Yeah.
So that has opened the door to basically any man who would like to enter female spaces, and particular lesbians. Like, and I have talked to a good few lesbians who were older and around before that and since then, and it has destroyed their spaces. It has destroyed their space.
It's really bad. Like, even an example, just like not a person who is identifying as trans, in that particular gay bar in Dublin, the like lesbian friendly gay bar that's like more woman centered than the George or Panty bar. I've gone into the toilet and there has been just a full-on bloke in his 40s, like not trans identified, not anything, just strolling into the women's toilets. And I walked in and it was actually just the two of us in the toilets. I walked in just behind him and I went, "This is the woman's," and he went, "Yeah, so." And I was like, "But you're in the woman's toilets." And he went, "Yeah, and what are you going to do about it?" And so I just immediately left and went back, and I was quite shaken. Obviously, I have, like, you know, I have my views and stuff, so whatever, but I knew that I was not able to go to that bar to say, like, "Look, there's a man in the toilet," because I knew that other people had been kicked out for saying there's a man in the toilet when it was a trans identified person. I was like, I'm not allowed to say anything because they're not going to do anything. They're not going to ask that man to leave the toilet. But it was like just someone's da in the toilet. Like, that's outrageous in the only quote unquote lesbian bar. Like, it's a gay bar, but it's the lesbian bar in Dublin. I've had like many conversations with other lesbian, like Irish lesbians on Twitter and stuff about it, and all of them are like, "No, it's a joke." Like, they call themselves like the lesbian bar, and it's just completely, the lesbians that they cater to are lesbian men.
Like a lesbian man.
I know, it's just outrageous. And if you say anything, you're told to leave via an Instagram story. There was an Instagram story, like myself and Not All Gays, the group that I founded, it's an LGB group. We had like a kind of jokey awards at the start of December, and Mr. Menno, who's like a prominent gay man from the UK, within the gender discussion, and he came over for it, and we went out for drinks in that bar, and he questioned, they also have behind one of their bars a sign that says "Fuck you, J.K. Rowling," just beside the till, but behind the bar. And he pulled them up on it, and then the following day on their Instagram story, they said, like, "Oh, people from LGB Alliance," none of us are involved in LGB Alliance, like LGB Alliance do their own work and we do our own work, but we're like, you know, like, we're different groups. They also are fully aware of the group that I'm involved in, because I'm a regular customer. They've seen the articles that I've been in. They know who I am. And they said, "You will be barred. You're not welcome here. We don't tolerate discrimination," because someone had written in ballpoint pen, so very much wipeable, off the table. I'm not going to name names, but it was someone in the group that we were with. There was like 15 of us in the bar. Someone wrote, "Lesbians don't have penises," and they took a picture of that and said that not because someone vandalized their table, but because it was discriminatory, that we were banned. The whole group is not allowed back to the bar because someone said lesbians don't have penises. Not because they vandalized, which absolutely should not have happened. It shouldn't have happened. Absolutely not. Like, that's not right that people were vandalizing. But it wasn't because of that. It was because it was discriminatory. So a lesbian bar has an issue with lesbians saying lesbians don't have penises in 2024. That's where we're at right now.
Like,
Sabina,
I
let me
mean,
come to you then. Rosemary, Claire, sorry, go ahead, Claire.
Claire, no, I'm just thinking, and it's just, you know, the bizarre situation to me. Surely you're allowed. The word discriminate sounds really bad, but surely the one thing we all discriminate in is our choice of sexual partner. So, you know, to say lesbians don't have penises is, you know, if you belong to the female sex class who like other females, you're allowed to say that. Yeah, maybe that some people don't like that, but that's the reality. It's the truth.
The whole point is that we are exclusionary of men. Like,
yeah.
that is the whole point of being a lesbian. Like, it's also not a thing that we can choose.
Exactly. It's not your choice. It's the way it is.
Yeah, like my life would be much easier if I wasn't. Like, that I didn't have to deal with all of this if I could just go about my life. Like, to say that it's discriminatory. Yeah, actually, you know what? It is discriminatory. I don't want to date men. Simple as male identified as a woman or not. But if that's
It's
discrimination,
crazy how that's been reversed.
I'm okay with being called discriminatory now, because literally anything is considered discriminatory at this point within the gay community. It's like, you breathe wrong and you're a hateful person. I think that's what's kind of missed within the conversation of like gender ideology, is how bad it is within the force teamed community that we're in, that a lot of people outside of it, like heterosexual people, don't see just quite how vicious it is within the community. Like, I have lost almost all of my friends that I had. Like, I have no friends from when I was younger. Belong to days, that's a different story. Obviously, that's because that it's belonged to. It was an LGBT youth group. I will get into that later. But I've had one of my closest lesbian friends from school. We were like best friends. There was like 4 of us were best friends. And none of them speak to me anymore because I said that lesbians don't have relationships with biological men. Like, lesbians do not have relations with people that have a penis. And one of them is a lesbian, a butch lesbian. And this is probably a segue to another issue that we're facing, particularly with the younger lesbians now. That she would be like a butch lesbian. She was always a proud lesbian. Like, this breaks my heart. I'm gonna try not to cry. Every time I think about her, I cry. But butch lesbian, was always a proud lesbian, and she kind of like brought me to be a proud of my sexuality, because I was just like figuring it out, and I was like, this feels weird. Like, it feels weird to kind of talk about it. Like, I'm just doing my own thing. And she was like, no, it's like a great thing. Like, unreal. Like, you know, be who you are, and that there's nothing to be ashamed of. And we had conversations about the toilet situation, like mixed sex toilets, and she was like, obviously not. Like, you don't want. And so I thought she was like on board, and then all of a sudden she started identifying as, in her own words, I am trying out the non-binary thing. And I just said, okay. And she said, I'll be using she or they pronouns. And I said, well, I hope you don't mind that I continue to use she then. If she had said any other pronouns, I would have just been like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm not kicking up a fuss in my kitchen table when we've all been drinking. But then she just never spoke to me again. And now I think, as far as I'm aware, is binding her chest, is calling herself a boy. And it's just the amount of butch lesbians that I have seen my age who are like, oh, well, I never liked wearing dresses. I was always kind of a tomboy and I'm same-sex attracted, that now no, I'm a straight man trapped in a woman's body. It's like the amount of lesbian, like all of the lesbians that I've talked to, the older lesbians, that is their concern now. Like all of the things that the older lesbians have faced. They're like, no, our issue is now the lesbians who are saying no because I prefer to wear docks, or I prefer to wear shirts instead of a dress. That means that I'm not a lesbian, and then they end up on hormones. And there's several lesbians that I know who like have gone, they're just short of getting what is the word for it? A phalloplasty. Like they're just off that, like they've done everything else. They have a beard, like it's just so upsetting, and they're only like 20, 22. Because they're being told that because they are not the stereotype of feminine, that they simply cannot be a woman who is same-sex attracted. That no, you're same-sex attracted, you like stereotypically more boyish things growing up, you're a bloke. And then it's so sad. It is so sad.
You want to come in?
Sorry?
You had your hand up, did you want to come in?
Yeah.
And Rosemary, you pop in then.
I was just thinking about, what you were saying about your friend with the phalloplasty. I remember seeing some.
What is that?
So basically, they take some skin grafts from your arm, and they take a lot of muscle and nerves, and they basically make a penis basically out of skin cells.
A penis shaped, yeah.
A penis shaped.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for example, anyway, back in 2008, I had a horrific motorbike accident where I almost lost my leg. They had to cut away the skin, and some of the photos, I'm sure you've seen them on Twitter. Yeah. They're horrific pictures, and I keep seeing them, and these young girls are getting these things done to them electively. Now, I had life-saving surgery on my leg to try and save my leg, and I still have issues with my skin grafts to this day, and I feel so sorry for these poor young women who are getting these skin grafts done, and they're going to have issues for the rest of their life, not only with the phalloplasty, but also with the skin, because they're going to be open to having cellulitis infections all the time. They're going to have no life at all, and it's just horrific that this stuff is happening to young women today, And I'm a tomboy myself. I served in the Reserve Defence Forces. I was in the civil defence and stuff like that. And even when I get given an example, when I was a teenager, when I first started getting my period, and my mom said, well, this is going to happen every month. And I said, well, I don't want to be a woman if this is going to happen. She goes, well, tough, you have to deal with it, And then I just got on with it. But I'm proud to be a woman and a tomboy, because I'm still a tomboy. But this is horrific that this is what they get young vulnerable people into this little web, and they go, oh well, because you don't act so ladylike, oh, you must be a man. And I'm like, oh, can you not just be an individual? It's like, why do we all have to be fitted in boxes? It's
no, exactly. Like when I was attending Belong To, and this is one of kind of how I came into this discussion in the first place, was because I did attend Belong To and I saw what was happening. And because I had that, I'm not even gonna call it a hard boundary. It shouldn't be a hard boundary that lesbians do not have relationships with biological men, regardless of how they identify.
That's the definition.
Yeah, no, it's literally female homosexuality. Female, not same, it's same sex attraction, not same gender. But I had that boundary even when I was like very much the other side of the argument. Um, and bear in mind, I was a teenager and very vulnerable, like mentally, like I was dealing with eating disorders and self-harm. So like I could see what was happening to the rest of the group. And there'd be bisexual girls and lesbian girls. All of them were like bi or lesbian, but mostly into women, and they'd all be like gender non-conforming girls. Tom, what back when I was a kid would have been a tomboy, which were perfectly normal, and there was plenty of them, and everyone was like, "Cool, she's just a tomboy," and it was no big deal. And they'd go in to belong to with their eating disorders or their other mental issues. And I knew what I was looking at because I was dealing with it myself and like getting help thanks to my family, like getting me like help for those issues. But these girls were not getting help for those issues. They were going in to belong to, and then because they were gender non-conforming and the whole culture of it and like the negative talk about cis people and hetero people and like saying that they're disgusting and all of this, like, and it was completely allowed by like the adults running the group, or like the the supervisors weren't the ones saying it, but they were observing it and not saying, hey, no, we're not like talking bad about anyone in here, it's meant to be like a safe space. And all of these people, all of these girls with issues, like like really self-harming, that I cannot express enough like how bad it was. It was so bad. And then all of a sudden, within a few times of them attending belong to, they were either a trans guy or non-binary or one like under the trans umbrella and identifying out of their sex. And that was completely unquestioned and immediately affirmed. There was no, hold on, well, like last week you were identifying as a lesbian. Can we just like maybe let's look at different avenues? And it was just, how can there was discussions about how to hide breast binders from your parents, like how to order them, maybe order them to your friend's house so your parents didn't know, or if you had one, to wash it in the bathroom sink so your parents didn't see it in your laundry if your parents did your laundry. And all of the like tips and tricks were females identifying as trans, like what they could do to like fix themselves. There was never any maybe please shave your beard if you're going to announce to the group that you are a lesbian. There was none of that. It was just like, oh my God, so amazing, and getting us all to clap. And it's just, there was so much pressure. And I know that several of the girls that identified as it or had been, had experienced some sort of sexual trauma as well, like to varying degrees. So it was just escaping their sex. And it's so obvious to me now that I understand it fully. And I've talked to detrans people and to older lesbians and lesbians who have genuine dysphoria of their bodies and stuff. Like, it's escaping the femaleness of their bodies. And there was so many of them that identified, and then like through acquaintances, there's 16 off the top of my head that I can name. So like I'm not going to claim that there's a higher figure or whatever, because I can only like think of 16 names that I remember from that time, because there was so many of them. But there was 16 that I can remember, and of the 16, only 3 still identify as trans, and that's 81% 0.25% who desisted. Thankfully desisted, I think most of them before they went a chemical medical route. Thankfully. But like then belong to and TENI and all of these NGOs and lobby groups say that it's no one detransitions, like no one regrets it, but it's 81.25% out of just the people that I can name. I know that there's more, but I'm not going to include them because I can't remember their names and I can't remember their details. So I'm not going to like include them in my statistic.
Mhm.
But that amount of them desisted, like fully, and went, oh God, no, I'm just gay. I'm just gay. Some of them were guys. Like a small percentage of that 16 were guys, and they were just gay guys, including one of like actually two of our Not All Gays members are included in that statistic. But the other one is a lesbian man. And he still identifies as that. He's one of the ones that didn't stop. But the rest of them were girls, who were just having a normal time as a teenage girl, dealing with normal changes and how difficult that is. You know, the changes in your body, especially if you're dealing with, you know, like a lot of them were on the autism spectrum as well, had been sexually assaulted to some degree, had an eating disorder. Of course, you're going to want to escape your body that's changing and is hypersexualized because your boobs are too big for your tiny frame at 14 or whatever. Like they're growing disproportionate to the rest of your body. Like I know I felt the same, that I was like, I didn't want my boobs to be as big as they were when I was 14.
Yeah.
I felt highly sexualized and wanted to hide myself, and I can completely understand why they'd want to escape that, especially if they were gender non-conforming. They didn't want to be like highly sexualized as a female. And it's so sad that that is not being recognized as like an issue, and it's just being like rolled through all of this legislation as if it's a good thing. And it's like, if they did not have the wait times, lots of them were on waiting lists to be seen by gender doctors because they were so short. They were like, no, I am trans, I'm a man, I'm a man, I'm a man. But because there was a wait time, and they realized then, like in the time that they were waiting to get seen by a doctor, if that was just a thing that was readily available tomorrow, they would have been on hormones. They'd be stuck then with issues and complications for life.
Yeah. So one time our crap health service actually helped out people.
Yeah, the
Like,
waiting list.
The waiting list kind of saved them. Well, to be fair to our National Gender Service, they're probably one of the more vigorous in terms of their screening anyway. But those girls are that experience you had, we know, is replicated across so many different countries, and where the healthcare is privatized, those girls have had double mastectomies, have taken testosterone to the point where it's irreversible. The changes are irreversible. The smaller numbers of them have had that genital mutilation surgery and hysterectomies, but so many have had double mastectomies, like 13, 14-year-old, 15-year-old girls, because the care is private. Like the only thing saving our girls here in Ireland is the fact that our care for that kind of thing is public, and you can't just pay somebody to remove your breasts when you're 14. But it does happen. It is happening across the world. It's
no, and
horrific.
one of them that didn't desist, one of the 16, or like one of the 3 out of the 16 that is still identifying as trans. She'd be, I don't know, 22, 23 now, but she breaks my heart more than anyone else, because we were really good friends, and she had amassed a following on YouTube because of her gender journey. when she was, I think she started when she was 15. And then, yeah, she would have been like 15, 16 still, but she'd amassed a following and was like breast binding. And I was, on kind of more that side of the argument. And I was like, absolutely, like, this is what you need to do. And I was a kid myself and very impressionable and didn't see the issue with it. But we were on a bus together one morning, and she just like out of nowhere went, I don't think I am trans, but my mom has gone to the school to like, she went to an all-girls school, so she like, her mom had gone to get the school to like get her chosen name on the roll, and to get her to be allowed to wear trousers as opposed to the school uniform skirt, and had caused like, not ructions in the school, but like a little bit of drama, that there was this whole ordeal about her getting special treatment, whatever. And then there was 30,000 subscribers on YouTube who were all for it, and she was like, I don't know if I am, but I don't know if I can backtrack now. This before any hormones or before any, and I just went, you don't have to explain. And this was me being like all for the like transitioning and all of that. And I was like, you don't have to, like, if you aren't sure, like, you shouldn't do that. And you're perfectly entitled, like, who cares what anyone else thinks? Like, just because you have subscribers, like, doesn't mean that you have to do something for random strangers on the internet. And now she's been on testosterone, I think 6-7 years. Double mastectomy, and I think is going to get a phalloplasty. It's so desperately sad because she's just a lesbian. But she was not 18 when she started hormones, because her family took her private and got her hormones. And then there was a big post on Facebook with like her, like, I'm actually actually stunned, but it was her like kind of bent over the table, like the hospital bed, with the needle in her bum of testosterone. And the mother posted it being like, I'm so proud of my baby boy. Like this 17-year-old child, and like bum and everything like out in the picture, being like, oh my God, I'm so happy, I'm so proud. And it's just like, it is happening in Ireland too, underage.
Yeah.
Just obviously not at the same, not the same volumes as elsewhere, but it is happening. And it's mostly happening to girls.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so sorry about your friend, Annaïg.
Oh no, it's yeah, no, it's really tragic. And obviously we don't talk anymore. The last time we spoke was actually that post that I made years ago, like in 2020 or something, about the bathrooms in schools being the suggestion that they would be mixed sex. And I just said something like, people keep arguing that it will be, oh, it's the same as your toilet at home. And I was like, no, it's not though. Like, you're not going to pee while your dad's washing his hands in the same room. That's not what happens in your bathroom at home. It's very much different from what they are suggesting in school bathrooms. And she messaged me like privately, because there was like kind of a dispute happening in the comments. And I was just like, you all need to calm down. Like, I'm not saying anything about gender. I'm just saying, like, it's not the same thing. And she messaged me and had a discussion, and she was actually agreeing with me, and then has progressed to like completely the other side of the argument. And I am a total the worst person in the world in her eyes. So it's changed now. But back in 2020, she was still on board with, yeah, no single sex spaces, but now the discourse has changed like entirely around gender ideology, and it's just gotten progressively more extreme. I think on both sides, but like they have just gone, no, like you say anything about single sex spaces and you're like the worst person in the world. But it's just yeah, no, that hurts. That hurts the most. Like that situation hurts the most because like she was just and when I asked her when we were still friends, when I asked her when I was like still on that side of the argument, and I asked her, and I asked all of them, I was like, how did you know? How do you know? Like, what was the indication? And every single one of the girls went, I didn't like wearing dresses as a kid.
I
And
was a
I prefer,
tomboy.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
was a tomboy.
but hers was, I really hated wearing dresses and I preferred playing with my brother. Playing like football with my brother than like sitting in with her sister. But her sister was several years older and her brother was only like a year and a half older. And it was just like, but every single time I've asked like a trans identified female, what, like, how did you know? It's always the same. It's so obvious. You were a tomboy. You didn't like playing with dolls. Neither did I. And I was not a tomboy. I didn't like playing with dolls. I liked my Sylvanian families, and I liked just like nice, nice calmness. But I also like playing outside and in the dirt. It didn't make me a boy. It didn't make me any less of a girl. And none of the tomboys that I was friends with were less of a girl. They were just tomboys. They just preferred playing football. And now that qualifies you to be a trans man stuck in a woman's body. And it's so desperately sad because that is the main issue facing like my generation of lesbians. There's obviously other issues, but that's what's happening. And I think of the lesbians my age, like almost all of them are identifying as like at least non-binary, if not trans. Like the butch lesbians.
Yeah.
There's like essentially no butch lesbians that are not using different pronouns in my age
brings me
bracket.
back to wondering. So, Sabina, you were the director of Dublin Pride. And so what was the initial thoughts or conversations during Dublin Pride coming up to the referendum and then after the referendum? Because I never knew that we voted in gender ID when I voted yes in the referendum for that one. You know,
Yeah.
I never knew I was voting for that.
I was actually the director of events. I wasn't the director of Dublin Pride. But when I was there in 2013, we had groups like Marrage, Equality and they were campaigning, you know, to bring in the referendum, to get it to be in a vote and, you know, change the constitution. But there was no talk about self-ID or the Gender Recognition Act. And I was actually here locally in my town. I did canvass in 2015 for the referendum. And I think it was like, about 2 weeks beforehand, they were talking about this gender recognition thing. And I was just like, what's this all about? You know, and they're like, oh, so transsexuals can, you know, have no issues with, you know, people like misgendering them or something. This is what I was told. And it was just like really obscurely how they brought it in. And yeah, I'm just trying to think back.
Sneaking it in. It was like
It was
sneaking it in
very,
under the
very
radar.
sneaky. It's like what they're trying to do today with the
Hate crime.
Constitution, you know. It's very, very sneaky, you know. It's just like, and sometimes you have to question, why are they trying to sneak this in? And at the time, like to be honest, I was like, I was living with a transgender male to female. They were renting a room off me with their partner, and we got on fine and stuff like that. And they were never really like, going around. Their case was complicated. I won't get into details. I don't want to talk to out that person or whatever. But like everyone was saying, it was such a great idea, and because they were telling me when they were transitioning, they had an awful trouble of people not recognizing their new gender, and that and I was thinking, oh well, maybe this might help them, but there was no talk about, like, when you think back on it now, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, there was no talk about safeguarding of women. There was no debate on it at all. It was very, very sneakily brought in, and so at the time I didn't really understand. At the time I didn't really understand all of it, because I wasn't really very political back then. I did want marriage equality for lesbian and gay couples to have same-sex marriage, and I totally agreed with that, because I have an uncle who is gay himself. So it's like, what, like, I'm not against them from getting married, and that's the way I was. That's where I came from it.
When you think about what happened at that time, the whole country was convulsed with discussing the future implications of our whole society if men were allowed to marry men and women were allowed to marry women. And all the while in the background, none of us were asked what we thought about, can men actually become women? So somewhere in the back rooms of Leinster House, all these TDs were having meetings with all these lobbyists from the likes of TENI and other trans activist organizations to enact this. So none of us were asked.
No,
It's not that we don't remember voting on this. We were not asked.
We weren't. It came in 2 months later. It was drafted 2 months later privately, but we weren't even asked. This was brought in.
But then what happened, Rosemary, is they drafted it. They presented the draft to the Dáil, and it had in it some gatekeeping. It had in medical requirements and all this kind of stuff. And then after that, so the TDs who voted it through, after that, it went to committee stage with 4 TDs in a back room, and they took out all of that gatekeeping. Now, I don't agree with any gender recognition. As in, I don't think men can become women. We shouldn't be lying about that. But to think that something that they were sold as being, this is going to help those few, true transsexuals who've had the surgery, who've been, cross-dressing for years, who've been presenting as, they were all women at the time, presenting as women at the time. There was no females presenting as males really clamoring for this at all. That's a much more recent phenomenon. So you were going to help the poor, sort of gentle homosexual transsexuals. So they were men who were gay but who wanted to look like women, and we were going to help them have a more private life. They could go through security with a document that matched what they looked like. Wouldn't be pulled aside to see, who are you? Why don't you look like your picture? Why doesn't your picture match your name? And all this crack. And that's what they were sold in the Dáil. All the TDs said, yeah, okay, fair enough. And then they whipped out everything, every safeguard that could possibly have been in there was whipped out, such that you can just go down, like Annaïg said earlier, go down and get a form that now says you're the opposite sex with no safeguarding or checks. You have 4 known violent sex offenders or physical assault, convicted of physical assault.
Excuse me, can I ask a question? Does anyone know why there's no safeguarding that 4 lunatics in government can throw these things into the law without anyone? Why is that not being safeguarded? Like, why is nobody saying, wait a minute? Yeah. Surely, I mean, you'd have that in the smallest business. You would have safeguarding, like, what if we buy too many flowers and we don't sell them all, they'll all wilt? Like, is there nobody checking how many flowers get ordered every day? Like, this is a country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating because, like you all said, that it was just brought in kind of like I wasn't able to vote in the referendum, but I was political. I've always been like interested in politics and what's going on in the country. Like, I don't know what was going on with me, but from a very young age, I was always like interested in politics and like what was happening. And I was so, this is actually something like I've talked to my younger sisters about it. Like, they're only 15 now and they have no interest whatsoever in politics. And I'm like, are you not excited to be able to like vote in a few years? Like, this is so exciting. Because when I was like 15, I couldn't wait. I was like, I can't wait to have my say. I can't wait to be involved. So I was like really watching the referendum, especially because I had just realized that I was gay. And I was like, oh my God, this affects me. This is so exciting. Like, oh my God. Like, I was only dying to be able to vote in that referendum, because I was like, oh my God, this is my referendum. Like, it's my referendum. I'm going to be able to get married. Like, this is so exciting. And I was paying attention the whole time and reading everything.
Yeah.
And there was not a word. Sorry, not
No,
to
there
curse.
wasn't.
There was not a word. Not a word about this. And
Yeah.
if I think maybe if I had seen it, I don't know if at the time I would have recognized it, because I was like starting to, I didn't even really know then. Like, I was only starting to go to Belong To, so I didn't really know. But like, if I had known then that like this was coming in and that there was no safeguarding, and that allowed biological males to identify as lesbian by law, not just like them saying it and me being like, no, you're not. Or no, I'm not, like, you're not one of my potential dating partners. You can do your own thing over there. If I had known that that would be like a legal thing that they were able to do, I would have been against it. Even then, I would have been like, no, you are not getting legal recognition for this. This is already too much. Like, just by your feelings definition of it. Even when I was like, yes, trans women are women and trans men are men. But back then, when I was in Belong To, it was still very much like, yeah, but still sex is a separate thing. Like, trans women are women, but they're still biologically male. Like, the mental gymnastics of it all, it's very hard to explain. Belong To was crazy. But it was still like, no, they're still biologically male and still biologically female, but we're going to respect them as like how they want to identify. And that's how I think they got me on board with it, because I was like, okay, well, like, yeah, we're still able to recognize that they are biologically female and still biologically male, but they want to present as this. And that was easy to digest. And then now it has changed. It is very much changed. And now no, we absolutely are, if not better, with some biological men who claim to be women, and particularly lesbians. They're like, no, we are better than the original.
Yeah.
And it's
well, of course, they're men. They're better than women, so obviously they're better at being women than women too. Better at everything.
Better at being lesbians. Better at being lesbians.
Better at being. I mean, do you know what's funny? My ex-husband painted a painting about when I first met him. I'd say it was around 1995, and it was a really good picture. It was like a painting of Grace Jones in a bikini, it looked like. But it was it had loads of paint on it, you know, and it had these glasses that you could almost take them off, you know, it had thick gold paint. And it was called Simon Taylor, the Lesbian. And my ex's best friend was called Simon Taylor. That was his name, you know, it still is his name. But so it's a beautiful painting. Like, it's absolutely amazing. Somebody bought it, you know, but it was just this gorgeous, big, butch woman with a screw haircut, you know, all her body defined beautifully, and in a bikini with these big gold glasses. And it was such a joke, you know, this is Simon Taylor. It's called Simon Taylor, the Lesbian, you know. And I mean, it was so funny at the time. Who knew that this was, I mean, this was so absurd.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I'd love to know how many lesbians, percentage-wise, in Ireland. My daughter told me there are hardly any gay girls in her school, and there was a lot of gay blokes. So is there a deficit of lesbians in Ireland?
No, there'd be the same percentages there always was, but just
Now
a
they're
high
all gay,
percentage.
non-binary.
Yeah. There's
So
the only lesbians that are still defining themselves as lesbians would be women like me who are like very feminine. Like, and there's always been masculine, like butch women in the lesbian community, and then the feminine lesbians. Like there's always been that.
yeah,
Like,
I know, yeah.
and we
But
go hand in hand. And that's always been completely normal. But now there is, and even on TikTok, they have started to cop that they're saying that they call them lesbians, like masculine, as opposed to butch, which what, like, I really don't care about the definition, but like the more masculine lesbians, the butch lesbians, that there's a shortage of them, but they aren't recognizing why. And
Yeah.
it's like, you're so close. You are so close to seeing why. There is not a shortage of them. It's just that they are not identifying as lesbians anymore. They're identifying as straight men. And it's so sad. But then not only that, like that part where there's all of these butch women like identifying out of their sex, which is horrendous. Like that, I think, is the biggest issue. Then you have the men identifying as lesbians. I would put that as like second biggest issue that lesbians are facing. But then there's also, particularly with TikTok and like other social media, that a lot of the younger population would use. There's like places like back in June of 2023, Johns Hopkins University put out a new definition of lesbian, which was non-women attracted to non-men attracted to non-men.
What?
Yeah.
Say that again. I'm confused. Say that again.
So it was Johns Hopkins University, and I had to fact check this before I came on because I was like, I cannot put someone incorrectly on blast because this is outrageous. And they retracted it eventually because all of the lesbians and the other women online were like, excuse me? But they had changed their definition of lesbian to non-men who are attracted to other non-men. How offensive that you are defining, firstly, a woman as something that is not a man.
Yeah.
I am not defined by how I am not a man, first and foremost. I am a woman. I am not a non-man. Do not define me by how I am not a man.
We're also non-cows and non-horses and non-rabbits.
Exactly, but like, do not even try and tell me how I am, like, that my definition as a person, as a human, is how I am not a man.
Yeah.
I am a woman and I am attracted to other women. But then within that definition then that they have created, and Belong To has tried to use that definition before, and then it was pulled very quickly after I met with the Children's Ombudsman and pointed it out. So not saying that I had any influence on that, but someone changed the definition on their website back to women loving other women. But within that definition of non-man loving non-man, that includes biological men who are non-binary because they're not a man, by their definition. Females identifying as non-binary, men identifying as trans, like literally every single person is included in non-man other than quote unquote cis straight man. Like the erosion
everyone except men are lesbians.
Yeah. Everyone could be a lesbian, and it's like the erosion of our boundaries, and obviously with the gender issue and like trans ideology and all of that, like there's an erosion of women's boundaries, point blank, like that. Obviously that's so obvious, but then when it comes to within the community, like the community, it is so targeted towards lesbians because we are the only group in society that says no to penis at every single point. Like we do not have to even sexually or romantically engage with them. Like it's heterosexual women are attracted to men that way. We might not need them in any other sense, but if it's a heterosexual woman, you know, might want a romantic or sexual relationship with a man. So they are necessary in that sense. Lesbians, we don't need them at all. Like in any part of our daily lives, we don't need men. We don't need a penis. And that is then like part of this is part of the reason why lesbian is such a huge, it is one of the most popular categories of porn, is because men fetishize something that they cannot have. Nun, as in NUN, as in like Catholic nun, is also another huge category in porn because they are women who do not have sex with men. And it's a huge category.
It's a
fetish.
conquest. It's a conquest, and they want conquests.
And talking about conquests, as a lesbian, like when I was, from a personal experience, like I am fully aware that straight men see me as a challenge. I always have since I came out as a lesbian. When I was 17, 18, I'd made friends with this group of guys. Like they knew that I was a lesbian. I thought we were great friends. We would like hang out, not just with me and them, but there would be like loads of us in the group, and we'd go and play cards, have a few drinks, and it would be most days because like we worked part-time jobs in the evening, so we'd like play cards a lot. And little did I know that, and I only found out later that, and this broke my trust in men completely, like this kind of my turning point, and I just kind of like pulled myself back and just spent time with my ex-partner, because I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can trust men ever after this, because they were meant to be like my good friends. They had put money on me to see who could turn me first. They had put money, like actual money, gambled on me like I was a horse to see who could turn me first. And that was my first experience of like the homophobia and like that you don't believe in female homosexuality. And it horrified me so much. I was like, oh my God, you actually see me as a piece of meat that you can just put money on and back me like a horse, that I'm not even a human, that you're going to bet money on me to see that you can, who can pull me first. That, and they would and that's why they were trying to buy me more drinks and whatever, to try and see who could like get me drunk to change my mind.
To rape you,
yeah. No, and thank God I found out before anything happened, because
Make me cry. This would just make me cry as a mother.
No, like, and it's like that has stuck with me to this day. Like I'm almost 26 now, and that's still something that I carry with me, like that I know that men are going to view me like that. Especially because I'm a lesbian, because I'm seen as a challenge.
Yeah.
Like I am viewed as a challenge, something to be conquered, something to be fixed. And something that can be gambled on as easily as a fucking greyhound or a horse.
Yeah.
And it's
disposable.
Disposable and like no consequences. But like that really haunted me for a long time, like in a big way. Like it made me really untrusting of men, and it's only in recent years when I've like made connections again with gay men from my past, like from years before, that you know, respect women and have a real intolerance for that kind of behavior, that now I'm like, okay, I trust some men sometimes, but you have to earn your trust because of that. Because the lesbians are treated so badly by straight men and by gay men, and by gay men, some gay men, some gay men. But it's just like, that was a real defining point, and that's when I withdrew from like everyone, like all men ever, for a really long time, for years, because of
I
that.
have to go because I'm just so tired and I have to walk my dog still. So
Well,
is it
we'll be
okay if
wrapping
I
up now
sign off?
shortly. Anyway, Rosemary. So, thank you for coming on. And there's no
Yeah,
shame,
I'm gonna
Rosemary.
fall asleep here if
Go
I'm
on.
sorry.
Yeah.
It's just
No,
after
you're
last
fine.
night. Last night was too much, 2 nights
And
in a row.
I have a 5 o'clock
But
start tomorrow morning. Can I just say one thing as well? And I just think it's really important. I mean, I'm really listening to you there, Annaïg, and just like your story is so powerful, and you're talking about not being able to trust men and going back to sort of childhood and your likes and dislikes. Can I just say one word I dislike? I hate that word tomboy, because I would have been described as a tomboy. I'm a heterosexual, very boring woman. Because I think what it does is, I mean, there's no equivalent for a boy. If you don't say they're a sissy girl, so a tomboy is considered nearly like a good thing, that you're nearly as good as a boy, or you're nearly like a boy, because your preferences are, you just don't like stereotypical girly things. And I grew up in the 70s, as a couple of the women I know in the networks are as well. And like, we were dismantling all that. We were kind of saying girls can just have likes and boys can just have likes. And it's a personality. It's just part of you. And it's not really important. So I won't even use that word, because, if you're saying that young lesbians are saying things like, well, I didn't like dresses. Well, neither did I. So what? It's only a piece of fabric,
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's really
No,
important.
I only use the term tomboy because that's what, like, it would have been described as. Like, it didn't really matter. Like, no one really cared when I was a kid, like when I was in primary school. But that was, if you were to define someone to be like, oh well, yeah, no, she doesn't like that, she's a tomboy, but it wouldn't be a big deal. But like, I completely understand, like, that it's nowadays that it's like, yeah, why were we defining that? Because that's ridiculous. Like, she was just a girl who didn't like dolls. Okay. Like, but that would have been.
It's a complete erasure of women, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lesbians aren't even allowed to be lesbians in a safe place, in a safe time, in a safe environment, in a women's only place, not even in that pub or that bar, in the bathroom, where women are most vulnerable.
Yeah.
I used to have the same problem when I was working for Dublin Pride. I used to go into the ladies' toilets, and you'd have gay men coming up. And one time, one gay man slapped me on the arse, and I was like, "What are you doing?" Oh, it's okay, I'm gay. And then they grab your breasts, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, it's okay, I'm gay." And I was just like, it's like an excuse for these. Like, I'm not saying that all gay men are like this. There are some really, really nice ones. Especially, I met some of the guys from Not All Gays before, and they're really, really lovely. But yeah, like, and I ended up, like, having to. I actually married a man in the end. Like, I'm still bisexual, and that's never going to change. Like, but like, I managed to marry a decent man. So there are decent ones out there, and I'm sorry that you had to deal with that, Annaïg, because if I found out that would happen, I won't mention what I would do to it. It's like, because I used to hang out with lads all the time, and it's like,
no, and so did I. Like, I grew up being like, even though I was a very feminine like girl growing up, I've always been highly feminine, but I had a lot, like, I hung out with men, like the boys, more in primary school. Like, I would just get along with them better, and like the kind of, I don't know, like the jokes and stuff. Like, I was more into running around and messing and whatever than the other girls, even though I was like, I would present like outwardly very feminine, and I am very feminine, but like then that, like, as soon as I said no, I'm a lesbian, then I was treated differently by the men who I had trusted as friends. Immediately.
Okay.
Like immediately.
Okay, I'll just say goodnight now. And
Good night.
just before I go, I just have to say this. We are all every woman, and I'm every woman, and I'm a girly girl, and I'm a tomboy, and I used to love climbing trees, and I wanted a dog so that I could baby it, because dolls were too dead for me. Like I wanted a real, a baby, like, so I got a little chihuahua. But I really loved my bikes, and I loved all the things my brothers, I had 3 brothers. I loved playing with my brothers' friends, but I also I wanted to be a ballerina. I think we're all everything. And I think you can like pink, and you can like diamonds, and you can also like muck and snails and worms. And all of that is the same, is all women can like all of them, and all men can like all of that. Because I don't think there is actually any gender toys. I really don't. And I think that women are more maternal and caring in that sense, maybe, and we don't care about things as much, but not everyone. But I also think that there's all that stuff in all of us, if we let it come out. I just think sometimes girls might have a mummy that likes to dress them up in ribbons, but they mightn't really like the ribbons, or they mightn't even notice them, So I think it's more to do with your mother, what kind of dolls you have, and what kind of toys, or how much money you have, or whatever. It's not really anything to do with the child. On a desert island, there are no dolls. And they all have the sand and the rocks, and that's, I think, more natural for playing than any doll or any plastic yoke. So anyway, I'm going to go now and love you and leave you, and thank you, Roisin. Thank you, Annaïg. Thank you. I forget your name.
I don't know who you're talking to.
No, not Sorka. The other lady that I was talking to in the pub
Sabrina?
for ages.
Oh, Sabrina.
Yeah, Sabrina. I'm so glad to see you. I have to tell you, I'm so glad to see you, because I had such a great time with you that night. And you were just the best. It was fabulous. And I just remember you so well, and I just didn't remember your name. But thank you very much. And we should all get together like we did before, and make it sooner rather than later.
Definitely.
And thanks. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but good night,
No,
all.
you're
See you
fine.
soon.
Good night.
See you next week. Bye-bye. Mwah.
Well, we'll probably finish up now, but Annaïg, it was just, I sort of just reiterate what everybody said. Your story has really touched us all. And I know, like, I've had to hold back the tears as a woman, as a mother, and as a friend, and everything else. And so, how we said we're going to finish off every show, and we can just say briefly is why Irish voters should vote no in the referendum. So, and maybe you might just give us why a young woman is, because there's always this talk, and it gets to me, oh, they're all middle-aged women. And it's not. There's also young women who are also saying no in the referendum. So why do you think we should vote no?
So because of my background in law, I understand the Constitution, and I'm actually quite fascinated by the Constitution. It's one of my special interests when it comes to law. Yes, the language is archaic, but the proposed changes are not to modernize the language while maintaining the protections. I know that some of my friends who are feminists as well think that it's that the language is the issue, and that we need to modernize it, so they'll be voting yes, but that's not what's proposed. You can't just vote yes to change the Constitution without looking at the potential repercussions that are going to come out of it. There has been so many Supreme Court judges, chief justices, ex-lawyers that have said this will have potential implications to child welfare, maintenance payments if a mother is deemed fit enough to return to work. There is simply no need to gender neutralize the language within the Constitution in that article, purely for the fact that several case law studies have said that fathers are included when needed. There is no, discrimination towards fathers, single fathers, widowed men. They are also protected by Article 41 too. So I'm voting no on the basis that it is not the modernization that I would want. So I am not going to be voting no for a modernization that I don't want. I will wait and vote no and ask for a referendum where it modernizes while maintaining the protection for mothers to not be forced back into the workforce due to economic necessity. Simple as there is no protection given in the new proposed definition. That is why.
Thank you, Nick. And Sabina, what would be your opinion on the referendum, and why would you think women or all of Irish voters should vote no?
Well, firstly, I think we should vote no for the simple fact that it's been rushed through. Through the Dáil 2 days, and then through the Seanad 2 days. The senators haven't had any proper debate, and for any referendum that we've had in the past, there's been years of debate through the houses of the Oireachtas. And this has just been rushed through way too quickly, and I'm wondering what is the sinister thing that's behind all of this. And the other thing is, the politicians can't even explain what a durable relationship is. Like, I have a durable relationship with my dog. Does that mean what does this all mean? And it's like, and I was explaining this to a few of my friends today, and of course she misheard me and thought I said Duracell relationship. So yeah, but it's just a joke. Raising mothers out of the Constitution. My mother is a self-employed woman. My grandmother used to be a seamstress and still looked after my mom and her brother. And then when my aunt arrived later on, she looked after her. So and also my grandmother used to do cabaret shows as well, and things like that, and then used to be involved in the what they used to call it the Old Time Dancing Association, where they used to do ballroom dancing. So none of what they're arguing for is just ridiculous, saying that this is holding us all back. And I'm like, it has never held me back. I served in the Reserve Defence Forces. I was in the civil defence. I might be a housewife today, but that doesn't mean that I'm like, oh, I'm chained to the kitchen sink. Being a housewife, you're basically like a nurse, and because I got dogs, I'm a vet, and I look after the finances, and I make sure that there's food in the fridge so we don't starve and die. And so what the likes of the National Women's Council are trying to say, that we're all oppressed. These are women in power. What on earth, These are trying to say that we are oppressed. We're oppressed because I'm a housewife. It's ridiculous.
But how can they even say, oh, it oppresses women, it has chained us? Ivana Bacik, leader of the Labour Party, leader of a political party, Orla O'Connell has been named as one of the top 100 people, influential people in the world by Times Magazine. On the board of NWCI, these high performing, successful women. Is this not about the right to choose to stay at home? That's what it comes down to. I'm a trainee solicitor. I have never been oppressed. We've had 2 female presidents back to back, never seen before or since in any country that there's been 2 back to back. What women has it oppressed in this country? It has simply not oppressed us from having careers. It has not, and their argument is so invalid.
So flawed. It's so flawed, and they're trying to bring in domestic violence. This will end domestic violence. I go, domestic violence is going to happen regardless of this law. And I really do feel sorry for women who have lived through domestic violence and stuff like that. and it must be horrific for them. But this law is not going to change what's going to happen behind closed doors for them. I'm sorry, you know, it's like, it's just like, you know, it's ridiculous. Like, anyway.
And we'll move to Claire. Claire, what are your? I know you're on the phone, and we really appreciate you tuning in on the phone. What would be your reasons for voting no in the up and coming referendum?
Well, I'd agree with the two women just before me. One thing I don't like is being told what to do, and I feel there's a bit of finger waving going on. As you know, there was a few names mentioned there about the National Women's Council, other NGOs, where they're telling us lesser intelligent women that we're oppressed, and that they, you know, we will replace words like, instead of a duty, they will strive. And instead of, you know, relationships being described as durable. And if people ask questions as to, well, what does that mean? It's kind of poo-pooed and pushed away and told, like, yeah, we'll worry about that again. So I don't see why you should change something that's working at the moment to something different that isn't, you know, we're not being told why it's going to be better. As I said, you know, as has been said, it's going to, you know, give us world peace, and it's going to end the housing crisis and all those kind of things, but we can't say how. Just on one thing as well, that people say the language is archaic. Again, I've got a law degree as well. I'm not in practice or anything like that. But if you look at nearly all laws, you know, they're archaic after a few years, but they still work. Because language is old doesn't mean that we just have to throw it out now and start all over again. So I don't see the point of it. And I don't see why that I should be lectured to by certain women who tell me how to think, but are not giving me any reasons for it. So I just say, if you're not sure about something, say no. You can always say yes again in the future.
Thank you, Claire. And Sorka, what is, we know, because you really brought it to us all last week, that, as you said, think what we might of De Valera, but he was insistent, he put it in the Constitution, and really out of respect for his mother, because then I went and Googled the Wikipedia straight afterwards, and it said, you know, that his mother was working as a nurse, and, you know, his Wikipedia of his mother is so interesting that, you know, lone parents for me, but thank you for bringing that up about De Valera. Maybe all the Fianna Fáil party should know that the De Valera put it in. So I'm looking for your words of wisdom this week.
Well, I've got a different slant this week, right? Yeah. So we've been out canvassing in Ennis this weekend, and a lot of people were very concerned about the replacement article. So not only are we're erasing mothers completely from Article 41, and Article 41 refers to the Antailach in the Irish language. The whole of the article is Antailach. It's translated into the family, the article about the family. But suddenly that word Tailach magically appears to mean home when you get down into Article 41.2. So I think whoever did the translation in 1937 maybe was a bit sexist, but the actual article, if you read it as Gaeilge, it's to me it's fine. But anyway, so they want to remove it out of the article that deals with the family. They're removing care, and then but by the same token, they're putting all of the burden of care onto families. So the wording of the article that they want to add in is 42b, and they want to say the state recognises the provision of care by members of a family to one another by reason of the bonds that exist among them, gives society, a state, a support without which the common good cannot be achieved, and shall strive to support such provision. So all they're saying about care is that they will strive to support families to care for each other. They're not saying anything about the rights of people who receive care. They're not saying that everyone every citizen has a right to receive care that is dignified, care that is suitable for their needs, care that is provided by the state. Just saying families provide care, and we might possibly bring ourselves to support such a provision, maybe. Because strive to support is way less emphatic than
endeavour to ensure. Yeah. It is like legally, like in a legal sense, it has way less weight.
Yeah.
It does not carry the same like obligation on the state to do anything. it does not say we are going to prevent you from having to go into the workforce.
Yeah.
Which is the main thing, because yes, it's saying, oh, we're going to strive to support you, but it doesn't say we're going to make sure that you are not forced out of the home while you are caring, regardless of gender or who you are caring for.
Yeah.
For economic necessity. It completely revokes that obligation on the state, which should have been challenged before now. We should have been challenging it. We should have been forcing the state to uphold their obligation, their constitutional obligation. And we just, I don't know, lots of people didn't even realize that the state were obliged to protect them like that. Lots of women didn't realize.
I would
and
say
we didn't challenge it.
The feminist organisations, the likes of the National Women's Council, have never fully valued the contribution that mothers make, and that a lot of women would choose to do that. They're very focused on getting women out of the home and into the workplace, and rightly so. If women want to work and want to have careers, that's absolutely should be supported. But there are a great many women who either don't want to have a high-flying career or just don't have one and just have a job. And they would like to work less and support and live at home, work within their home. They would like to raise their own children. And that is actually known to be the best environment for young children, is to have a stable, solid one person caring for them consistently through the weeks. So you're taking away all of that recognition out of Article 41 and into Article 42, you're putting this huge onus on families that they care for one another.
Yeah.
With no... And that's basically the only kind of care that the state shall strive to support. So for me, I would reject the second wording, even if they weren't taking out the first wording, because it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't give enough rights to the cared for, to somebody who's disabled or elderly, who or ill, who requires care. It doesn't give them any rights, and it doesn't give the state any obligation to care for those people outside of the family. So for me, it's a no on the replacement as well as a no on the removal. And that's all I'll say tonight, because I'm sure I'll have more to say another time. Just wanted to find out does anyone know what Article 42 covers? Because I can't find like the top of each article has a title. So Article 41 is all about the family, but I can't. I'll find it. I think it's education or something like that, but I'll find it.
I have the bun rocked here. Hang on.
Oh yeah, will you?
Sabina.
It covers children.
So if Article 42 in its entirety is covering children, why are they saying...
Sorry, the whole thing is education, but then there's another section, 42A, it covers children. So I don't know if you...
So what's 42B? What's going to be the subtitle for 42B? Like they're lumping disabled people, elderly people, children, and ill people all into the same article of care, when in fact they're like totally different things. Like it's a no for me for that reason. As well.
Because even if it was progressive and we were all on board for like changing it or updating it and making it neutral, it is so unclear.
Yeah.
Simply cannot say, yes, I'm on board for this, because it is unclear, and the unintended consequences could take us 30 years to come back on repeal. Like, we have no idea what the legislation after this is going to, like, the impact it's going to have on legislation. The last time they did this without looking at the unintended consequences, it took us 30 years to repeal it, and we repealed it eventually. But they didn't care. They didn't look at what it was going to mean for women and what this is going to mean for women now. So that it's just been rushed through. Like, every single point that we've made are reasons to vote no. It's just
Also, my dad always says, if you don't know, vote no. So anyone who's in the don't know category, because I've seen the polls just recently, vote no. Because if you don't, like, and I was saying this to some people today, like, that I met up with, and some of them were saying, well, I don't know what to do. And I said, this is a simple answer to your question. If you don't know, vote no. Because if you vote yes, and then you go, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, and then you regret it. It'll take years, as Annaïg has said, to change it, like, you know. So,
and the fact is, like, that these articles haven't hindered recognition of families in legislation, and they haven't hindered any legislation that's been introduced to ensure equality access to the workplace. So they're not actually doing any harm in there.
Yeah.
Like,
and they're
so
also using
not sure, don't change it.
Case that was brought through the courts there to get the widow's pension because he wasn't married. But you could correct me if I'm wrong, Annaïg, but as far as I remember, that we're in a common law thing. So that case is set forward as precedent, as I
yeah.
So like for people going forward, so like
he is protected under 41(2). He is protected, even though the words are female based.
Yeah.
Is still protected, and there has been multiple case law that has included that. I mean, Justice Denham back in 2001 in the case of Senate versus Department of Education, she made clear, and that is case law, and this is how we work in our country, like how our legal system works. She stated that it does not mean that a woman's place is solely in the home. It just recognizes the role that women who choose to stay at home and mothers who choose to stay at home have in society, and without them, society would not function. I mean, they wouldn't. So, like, the fact that an she's current Supreme Court judge, but was Chief Justice previously, that also the fact she's female, like, does that not say at all that this article has not prevented women from becoming the most successful roles in their career? She has reached the highest level of the judicial system. She has not been oppressed. We have not been oppressed. Women have not been materially negatively impacted by Article 41(2).
Yeah.
The marriage bar preceded by 13 years, and then it was found unconstitutional without any constitutional change, meaning 41(2) had no impact on the marriage bar, on us working, on us, of any of the other things. Otherwise it would have changed, and it hasn't.
Yeah. It's like Leisha basically, has outlined, all the inequality that faces women faces us because we're women, not because of what this says. This article is not the thing. This will not change the fact that we do most of the housework. It will not change the fact that we get pregnant, give birth, and breastfeed. The inequality exists not because of this article, and this article protects us. So no, it's a no.
And just because even if we change it to say, oh yeah, carers or whatever, neutralize it, or even include fathers, if we were to change it to like fathers and mothers who stay at home, that is not going to change the fact that women provide 90% of the housework, unpaid work, care work in the home. We will, and that's just the way it is. The Constitution isn't going to change it, and the Constitution is not the reason why it happens either. It's simply not. We just do it because that's just the way our society works. That is a whole other issue. That's a societal issue, not a legislative or a constitutional issue.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for taking the time and being members of our panel here on Confident Women Ireland. It's really given, and you ladies are giving the voice to women of Ireland, and you're going to give women of Ireland the confidence to actually speak their own voice, their own truth. I hate that word, speak my truth. It's so woke, but they're going to start talking more. They're going to use their voice to actually stand up for what they really want, instead of being whitewashed from society and conversation. So ladies, you're heroes, and you're really setting this precedent for women to find platforms to have a voice here in Ireland, because we've been kept silent for far too long. So thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Until next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.